To my idiot daughter, trying to buy love with money. That's what my mom said, champagne glass raised, her voice slicing through the room like a cold blade. Everyone laughed. My cousins, my brother, even my dad tried to hide a grin behind his napkin. The lights shimmered off the gold 60 balloons, and I just stood there, frozen, holding the envelope that contained the deed to her new apartment. Hy everyone, my name is Lena Hart, I'm 32. And in that moment, I realized the cruelest thing about love: it can starve you for years, and still you'll keep setting the table for people who never plan to feed you back. I'd spent months planning that surprise. A 2-bedroom place near the lake, sunlight pouring through wide windows, a kitchen she once said looked like peace. I thought giving it to her would finally make her proud. Instead, she made me the punchline. Guess money can't buy brains, my brother snorted. Laughter echoed again. I felt my throat tighten, not from tears, from disbelief. The woman I'd worshipped my whole life was now entertaining the room with my humiliation. I smiled. Quietly set the envelope on the table. Happy birthday, Mom. Then I turned and walked out, heels clicking like a heartbeat that had finally learned rhythm after years of chaos. Outside, the night air smelled like rain and regret. I could still hear them laughing through the open window. The city lights blurred behind my tears. When I reached my car, I didn't cry. I just sat there, hands on the wheel, feeling the weight of 32 years of trying to be enough. That night, I deleted the family group chat. Every message. Every photo. Every forced memory. And in the silence that followed, something inside me clicked, like a door finally locking. At 7 a.m. the next morning, I woke to 88 missed calls. I walked to the window. Her driveway, the one that used to hold 2 shiny cars, was empty. I stared for a long time, until a smile crept back onto my face. Because for the first time in my life, I knew they finally noticed I was gone. If this ever happened to you, say same in the comments. The first call came from my dad. Lena, what did you do? Where's Mom's car? His voice cracked with panic. The same man who hadn't remembered my birthday in 5 years suddenly sounded desperate. I didn't answer. I just watched the steam rise from my coffee cup, slow and calm. The silence on my end must have unnerved him because 3 seconds later, he texted. This isn't funny. Bring it back. Bring what back? The car she bought using the account I funded? The house she bragged about owning, that I'd secretly been paying the property tax for since Dad's job loss? I almost laughed. See, the apartment gift wasn't the only thing I'd prepared. 4 months, I'd been quietly untangling my name from every joint account, every hidden loan, every responsibility my parents had quietly shifted onto me. They used my credit to refinance their home. My savings to help my brother start a business. My empathy to survive their chaos. And when I stopped funding them, they mocked me for becoming cold. I opened my laptop. Every asset I'd legally moved into my own trust glowed back at me. Property deeds, vehicles, savings. The house they lived in? Still under my name. I hadn't taken revenge. I'd simply reclaimed what was already mine. By noon, Mom's voice finally appeared on voicemail, trembling, furious. You can't just take everything. We're family. Funny how family only remembers that word when the money dries up. That evening, my brother sent one message. Mom fainted. Are you happy? No. Not happy. Just, free. For the first time, freedom didn't sound like laughter or champagne. It sounded like the click of blocked numbers. The thud of returned mail. And the calm rhythm of my own heartbeat, steady, unbothered. Outside my window, the sunset bled across the lake, gold fading into fire. It looked like closure. And yet, something told me this wasn't over. Because people who live off your kindness don't vanish quietly, they regroup. And when they do, the real storm begins. By morning, the storm had arrived. My aunt called first, pretending concern. Sweetheart, your mom's been crying all night. Can't you just talk to her? Her voice was syrupy, but I could hear the curiosity dripping beneath it. They didn't care about Mom's tears. They wanted gossip, the kind that fed their weekend phone calls. I kept my tone soft. Tell her to check her mailbox. Everything she needs is there. Then I hung up. Inside that mailbox was a single envelope, a full statement showing how much I'd paid toward their debts over the past 6 years. Every car, every mortgage, every medical bill. My signature next to each line item. And at the bottom, one simple sentence I'd written by hand. Debt settled. Daughter released. At noon, my brother texted me again. You think this makes you strong? You're heartless. Heartless. The word stuck for a moment. Funny, when I was covering his $18,000 business loan, he called me an angel. That night, I opened my old journal. Between wrinkled pages was a quote I'd written years ago. When love demands payment, it's not love, it's labor. It hit different now. I'd spent so long buying their approval that I'd forgotten what silence sounded like. Now, it was my favorite sound. Still, guilt has a way of sneaking in, like a ghost at 3 a.m. I lay awake, thinking about Mom. About how her laugh used to mean safety when I was a kid. About how she'd tuck my hair behind my ear and say, "You'll always have a home here." And then the echo of her toast replayed in my head, to my idiot daughter. I turned over, pressing my face into the pillow. No tears. Just exhaustion. Freedom, it turns out, is heavy before it's light. The next morning, a message slid across my phone screen from an unknown number. You'll regret this, Lena. You forgot whose name is on the will. I stared at it, and smiled faintly. Because the thing about wills. They are just words, until the assets move. The message about the will kept replaying in my mind as I drove to work. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual, not out of fear, out of clarity. If they wanted a war over inheritance, they were already too late. Months ago, while they were busy mocking my lonely, career-obsessed life, I'd been quietly preparing the paperwork. My lawyer, a calm woman named Teresa, had drawn up a living trust that moved everything under my name out of reach. Apartment, investments, even the lake house they thought was still theirs. By lunchtime, Mom's next voicemail arrived. How could you humiliate me like this? Everyone in the family knows what you did. Your uncle said you're making me look greedy. I listened once. Deleted it. She'd spent my entire life convincing others I was too emotional, too ambitious, too much. Now she was learning what it felt like to be too quiet. That evening, as the sky turned violet, I drove by her street, not to check on her, but to confirm something. The cars were gone. The front gate locked. Her neighbor, Mrs. Doyle, spotted me and waved. Your mom moved out this morning, she said. Something about renovations. Renovations. That's one word for eviction. Inside, a strange mix of relief and ache twisted through me. I didn't want to ruin her life, I just wanted mine back. But guilt doesn't disappear neatly. It lingers, like perfume on an empty seat. I sat in my car outside her darkened house for a long time. The wind rattled the mailbox, that same one that had once carried my birthday cards, now filled with legal notices. It was poetic, in a way. Before driving off, I whispered, "You raised a provider, not a fool." Then I turned the ignition and left without looking back. When I got home, my phone buzzed again, a new voicemail, this time from my father. Your mother isn't well. If you had a heart, you'd come home. Home. That word had expired long ago. But a part of me knew, before this story was done, I'd have to walk through that door one last time. 2 days passed before I finally stood outside their door again. The house looked smaller now, not because it had changed, but because I had. I rang the bell once. Silence. Then the faint shuffle of footsteps. Mom opened it halfway. Her face was pale, hair messy, eyes swollen from crying, or pretending to. Came to gloat? She asked, voice brittle. No, I said softly. Came to return your keys. I placed them in her hand, the same set that used to unlock everything she owned. Her gaze darted toward the driveway. Empty. You took both cars, she said, trembling. They were ours. They were registered to my name, I replied. You just never asked why the insurance was always paid on time. For a second, her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Behind her, the dining room still had the gold 60 balloons, half deflated, drooping against the wall like tired memories. Dad entered next, eyes red. We raised you better than this, he said. I met his gaze. No, you trained me to provide. Raising me would have meant loving me without an invoice. The air went still. Somewhere in the distance, a clock ticked, Slow, deliberate, merciless. I slid an envelope across the counter. Inside was one final document, the official title transfer for the apartment. Keep it, I said quietly. Not because you deserve it, but because I'm done letting pain dictate generosity. Mom stared at it, then at me. You think this makes you better? No, I whispered. It makes me free. As I turned to leave, her voice cracked. Lena, wait, do you hate me that much? I paused in the doorway, the winter air brushing my face like truth itself. I don't hate you, Mom, I said. I just stopped volunteering to be your proof of love. And then I walked away, heels echoing against the marble floor, the same rhythm from that birthday night. Only this time, the laughter was gone. Only silence remained, and in it, the sound of power returning to its rightful owner. The silence after that night was deafening. No calls. No messages. No apologies. Just an invisible emptiness that somehow felt louder than their mockery ever had. But emptiness can be a gift. It gives you room to breathe, to rebuild, to remember who you were before someone taught you shame. I filled my days with work, my evenings with walks by the lake. The apartment I'd bought for Mom was still legally hers now, but it didn't matter. I had peace. And peace was priceless. One evening, while watering the small fern on my balcony, I saw my brother's car pull up below. He didn't text first. He just showed up, nervous, shifting from foot to foot when I opened the door. Mom's in the hospital, he said quietly. Blood pressure spike. She's asking for you. My chest tightened. Not with guilt, with something more complicated. I grabbed my coat. Let's go. The drive was wordless. Streetlights flashed across the windshield like reminders of everything we'd said, and hadn't. When I entered the hospital room, Mom looked smaller than I remembered. Her hands trembled as she reached for me. You really came. I'm not cruel, I whispered. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The machines hummed softly, steady as my heart beat. Then she said something I didn't expect. I thought money would make you stay. Her voice cracked mid-sentence. And for the first time, I saw her, not as my mother, but as a woman trapped by pride and regret. I was never after money, Mom, I said. Just respect. Maybe even love. She nodded faintly, tears catching in the corners of her eyes. But before I could say more, the nurse entered, cutting through the fragile silence. My brother stood by the door, watching, but not with hate this time. With something like understanding. And as I looked at both of them, my fractured family, I realized the storm was finally breaking. But peace, I knew, never arrives without one last lightning strike. And mine was still on the way. Mom was discharged 2 days later. I stayed only long enough to make sure the bills were covered, not by me, but by the insurance she'd always refused to activate. For once, she accepted help from the system instead of me. It felt like the world was gently rebalancing itself. But peace didn't come quietly. A week later, I received a letter from our family lawyer, a formal notice that my parents had decided to revise inheritance distributions. In other words, one last attempt at control. I smiled. The irony was beautiful. They were drafting a will for assets they no longer owned. Everything had been legally secured months before. My own trust, my own holdings, protected and sealed. Still, part of me hurt. Not because they tried again to take, but because they still hadn't learned that love isn't a transaction. That night, I sat by the window and opened an old box, filled with childhood drawings and faded birthday cards. One stood out. To Mommy, from Lena, thank you for teaching me how to be strong. I laughed quietly. Maybe I just misunderstood what strong meant back then. A few days later, I got a voicemail from Dad. Your mom wants to talk. She's different now. Please. I hesitated, then called back. When she answered, her voice was quieter. Lena, I found the letter you left in the mailbox. The one that said daughter released. I've read it every night. I didn't understand then. I do now. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The wind outside carried the faint sound of rain, the same sound I'd heard the night everything fell apart. I don't hate you, I finally said. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry. There it was. The apology I thought would never come. It didn't fix the past, but it made the air lighter somehow. And as I hung up, I realized forgiveness doesn't mean returning. Sometimes it just means no longer bleeding when you remember. The final chapter was waiting. And I already knew how it would end. A month later, I received an invitation, handwritten, sealed in gold. Dinner at Mom's new apartment. Just family. No speeches. For a second, I almost laughed at the irony. But something in me softened. Maybe this wasn't a trap, maybe it was closure. That night, I stood outside her apartment, the same one she once mocked me for gifting her. When she opened the door, I froze. The place was spotless, warm, quiet. A single vase of lilies sat on the table. "Come in," she said softly. "I made your favorite, rosemary pasta." Her voice trembled, not from arrogance this time, but from something fragile. Regret, maybe. Dinner was awkward at first. My brother cracked a few half-hearted jokes. My dad avoided eye contact. Then Mom raised her glass, the same way she had on her birthday. My chest tightened. But this time, her words were different. "To my daughter, who gave me a home, long before she ever bought me one." The air shifted. No laughter. Just silence, the kind that heals instead of hurts. Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't look away. We clinked glasses quietly. And for once, her eyes didn't hold mockery, only truth. After dinner, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a note, written in her shaky handwriting. "I sold the cars. The money's been donated to the women's shelter you volunteer for. You were right, love isn't a bill. It's a return." I didn't know what to say. For years I'd dreamed of hearing "I'm sorry," but this gesture said more than any words could. I hugged her, gently, like forgiveness itself. The past didn't vanish, but it stopped hurting. As I left, the city lights glimmered across the lake, the same one I used to stare at alone. Now it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Because revenge, I realized, isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's peace, the kind that comes when they finally see the reflection they once mocked. And as I walked away under the soft hum of the night, one word echoed in my heart.